about this guy and his experiences doing what? What's he doing here in this excerpt?
You asking what he does for professionally or what his point of view is?
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, is he?
He's essentially we're not, we're criticizing today's college students
Yeah.
at the university.
Yeah. He's a professor at a university. He teaches. So, yes, yeah, he's very critical. Okay, what's he most interested in? Teaching, reading, students, or history? What's he most interested in? Reading. Reading. He's not interested so much in teaching because of the students he has, but reading is everything to him. But he's more interested in reading. Okay, it says, okay, what would he use, what term or phrase would he use to describe the younger college students?
I said a dime a dozen.
And that's right.
Oh, it is?
A dime a dozen, yes. They're kind of like all the same, all the same,
Yeah.
all the same. Again, younger college students, all the same, kind of lost, since they're all the same. What does the book say here? Sorry. All right. They're mass produced. Younger students they're just mass produced, so that means they're all the same.
In the first paragraph,
Yeah. Okay. Then the author compares Shakespeare to a roast goose. In the middle of the paragraph, what is he suggesting about older students? Okay, he talks here about, where is it? As for the older scholars, like students at a cooking school, they cook up Shakespeare, serve him up like roast goose, stuffed with their political, sexual agendas, carve and quarter him with long knives. So what is he saying the older students do to Shakespeare?
He said, I just said, they dissect literature too
Yeah,
much.
they just take it apart too much and
And
such.
ruin the meaning.
Yeah, they just ruin the meaning. They take it apart too much. You didn't know in public school, Shakespeare's full of sexual innuendos, but we couldn't teach those, and I didn't teach those. But I always get my students' attention. I said, go read it. There's lots of stuff in there that I can't talk to you about. And they try to read something. Anyway, the tone. Upbeat, scholarly, disapproving, sentimental.
Disapproving.
Yeah, and the whole thing, I mean, yeah. He's not a very happy human being. He's very disapproving of everything. Okay, later he refers to his brother as a shaper himself of the tawdry yellow thing they sell now in the humanities. What is his attitude? It's still the same thing. He's what?
Disapproving.
Disapproving.
What's the answer for 50?
Disapproving. Disapproving of both of them. C and D. Okay. Disapproving of both. He's critical, he's dissatisfied with the students, and then he's just disciplined. It's kind of like, it's redundant, meaning it repeats itself. It's kind of like the same question over and over. Anyway, what we've got here. Any questions on any of these? Okay. I'm passing this out to you, so don't start looking for it. Pass this out to you. And if you remember last week, I told you that I had some answers on the back of something I wanted you to remember and bring.
Yes.
See if you can find that. You should have that with last week's. For his, yes. Oh, I've already set aside some work for her. Thank you for taking care of her. You want some for? All right. extras, and I won't give you too much of the stink eye. You need the stink eye? You have the answers from last week? In your car? Ah, that's okay. Do you think you have them?
Yeah.
If not, I'll be glad to give you one. You know I'm just teasing you. I take care of everybody. I don't get it. You got it out here?
Yeah, I think, yeah.
You found it? Okay, very good. Have yours? Wow. And yours? Okay. Stink eye, evil eye, all different names. Okay, where did I put my extra copies? I just had them in my hand. It's on the extras. Put this up here for now. Well, this won't hurt. Okay. Again, this is more on point of view. You won't be asked a whole bunch of questions, like what is the point of view? You might be asked from whose point of view is the story told? How would the story change if it was this character instead of that character telling the story? Okay, on the gallows. If any of you ever sat in junior English in high school, chances are you read Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge. That's sort of a standard in a junior English textbook. If you have kids in junior English, 11th grade English, check their book. It's a great story. But you're going to be confused. If you're not familiar with it, you're going to say, why in the world did she tell you this is a great story? On the gallows. What's a gallows? What's a gallows?
That's where people are hung.
Gallows, that's where people are, yeah. Don't you like my, my acting? Gallows, where they're hanging. Okay. A man stood on a railroad bridge in northern Alabama, looking down into the swift water 20 feet below. The man's hands were tied behind his back, the wrists bound with a cord. A rope closely encircled his neck. It was attached to a stout cross timber above his head, and the slack fell to the level of his knees. Some loose boards laid upon the ties supporting the rails of the railway supplied a footing for him and his executioners, 2 private soldiers of the Federal Army, directed by a sergeant who in civil life may have been a deputy sheriff. A short remove, meaning distance, upon the same temporary platform was an officer in the uniform of his rank, armed. He was a captain. A sentinel at each end of the bridge stood with his rifle in position known as support, that is to say, vertical in front of the left shoulder, the hammer resting on the forearm, thrown straight across his chest, a formal and unnatural position enforcing an erect carriage of the body. It did not appear to be the duty of these 2 men to know what was occurring at the center of the bridge. They merely blockaded the 2 ends of the foot planking that traversed it. So we have a man about to be hanged. In this passage, all right, I've already circled this, sorry. The narrator provides information about what the scene looks like. He's setting the scene. He wants you, the reader, to almost be standing there with the noose around your neck. He's setting that scene for you. And because he's not telling us anything about what one person thinks, nothing about feelings, like someone's frightened. Why the guy's being hanged? But the scene is being set. He's gone into very particular description. I wonder why. If the man about to be executed were describing the scene, if the guy getting ready to be hanged was describing it, what would he most likely include? Well, I've already circled it. Okay. He He would include his own thoughts and feelings if he was telling the story from his point of view. Okay. These are the kinds of questions you most likely would be asked on the test when it comes to point of view. Okay. Next few passages. Okay. This passage, the girls receive presents. It's another passage from Little Women, written way, 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 way back. It's about a bunch of sisters and their lives. Okay. Excerpts from, doesn't tell what this is from. Narrator describes Connie, so you can be filling in the blanks. Dexter watches the girl answering questions. And on the back side, a tutor of refugees. Circle any words you're not sure about. See what you can do with this for a little while. Everybody signed in, right? No, Edwin? Edwin's usually here. That's fine. George never misses. He's missed 2 now. And Hassan? Am I saying his name right? Hassan? Hassan? You always sits right over here?
Yeah.
The beard?
Mm-hmm.
I hate to describe him that way. He never misses. He's not here tonight. I hope everything is okay for him. Oh, you know what? His hours were changing at work. He's gonna come to my afternoon. I'm thinking out loud. Sorry, I'm in a hurry. then, okay, that's fine. Work on that, that's fine. look at these, if you would. Okay. The girls received presents. Okay, fortunately on question number 3, the narrator knows that Joe is disappointed about the lack of presents and that Meg or Margaret has a sweet and pious nature. The narrator in the story is, okay, you won't be asked that question. I don't think you're going to have to know that term, omniscient. But omniscient is like the person outside looking in and telling the story about everyone. I don't think you're going to have to know that word. But if so, just remember omniscient.
Third person?
Omniscient means sees everything, knows everything.
Okay.
Because that technically is what the word means. Okay, Meg or Margaret is described as having small vanities. According to this passage, who has this perspective about Meg? Okay, the narrator. The narrator says that about her. The other people don't say that. The only reason it would be one of these others is if they said it in dialogue. Okay, and by using this point of view, the doctor really wants to present the thoughts of all the characters. You know, everything that's going on with all of them. You know, that gives you a more rounded view. Sometimes, some stories, the author only wants you to know what's going on in one person's head. Okay. And the last it says, I shall keep my book on the table here and read a little every morning, for I know it will do me some good. And how is this statement supported the narrator's point of view about Meg? Shows she's sweet and pious. The word pious means deeply religious or deeply devoted to something. Okay, and bade, that word came up here, says, okay, she woke Meg with a Merry Christmas and bade her see what was under her pillow. Bade is like a past tense of bid. I bid you to do something. It's like requesting, commanding. Okay, inviting someone to do, commanding is almost too strong of a word. Any questions on this one? Okay, you can tell some of the language in here without even seeing this date, that this story had to have written about a time way back. Even if it wasn't written, it was written way back, but it was written about a time long before now. Okay, that's some of the phrasing and such. Okay, narrator describes Connie. She was 15, had a quick nervous giggling habit. Okay. Okay. What does it mean stop gawking at yourself? Gawking is kind of a slang word. Stop gawking. What does gawking mean?
Continuously looking.
Stop. Yeah, gawking is another word for looking. It's not just stop looking. You know, like your head's always craning there, gawking at yourself, seeing what's going on. You know. They say a woman can't pass a mirror up without looking.
It's true.
You know, except I like to go, who's that person with that hair? That's not me. Oh, that is me. You know, I still can't, never mind. At home it's fine, but when I'm out and I catch my reflection with this hair, never mind. Okay, it's written from omniscient, but again, thank goodness we won't have to know that word and all, because we're getting into Connie's thoughts and actions as well as her mother's. Okay, this excerpt about Dexter watches the girl. The little girl's smile is radiant, blatantly artificial, convincing. What does blatant mean? What do you think blatant means?
Obvious. I mean, the word that comes to my head is obvious.
Obvious? Yeah. Obvious. Blatant means obvious. A radiant, obviously artificial, but convincing smile. Okay. All right, the girl's smile, okay. This tells the narrator what? Knows the girl's thoughts. Knows that she's not really intending a sincere smile. If Dexter were the narrator of this passage, he would what?
You use the first person.
Yeah, he would say I. Yeah. Okay, any questions on that? Okay, then, tutor of refugees. Brashly here means boldly attempt to do something. Okay, and here I was palpitating to get going. Well, the word palpitate usually is used like he's suffering from heart palpitations, meaning his heart's beating real fast and all, but he was palpitating, meaning he was very anxious, eager to get to do something. So, but we usually use the word palpitating, referring to the heart beating really, really fast. Okay, the narrator of the story is a college student. Because somewhere in here, even though it's told first person point of view, okay, okay. The college sent me.
It says first line paragraph 2. I
Okay.
was in those days a post student.
Yeah, he was a college student.
Yeah.
Okay. Oscar Gester's thoughts and actions are revealed through the student. Okay. And on the basis of the point of view of the passage, what information is most likely to be included later in the story?
Anything the student thinks.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Anything seen or thought by the college student himself and the experience. Paragraph 2 includes a statement. I was in those days a poor student and would brashly attempt to teach anybody anything for $1 an hour, although I have since learned better. What does this quotation reveal about the narrator's perspective on the events in the story? Okay. Yeah, see, he has learned about events in the past, but he's learned much more since then. Because he even says at one point, he's teaching an economist, okay? Someone who taught medieval history, okay? Critic and journalist at one time, okay, that must have been the name of a newspaper or something. They were accomplished then. I had my nerve associating with them. These were people who knew so much more.
And here I am teaching them.
Okay, but that's a world crisis. That's what a world crisis does for people. They get educated. Who gets educated? The people he tutored or him?
The people that he's tutoring. Well, it says to everybody, that's what he's.
Yeah, actually both did.
Everybody, yeah.
Both.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, and the qualities as the point of view emphasize is youth. Okay, he was young, he thought he knew everything. So, anyway, but you know what? Most students in college do think they know everything. That's why I never taught seniors in high school.
Really?
I loved my 9th graders and my 10th graders. And I taught juniors 1 year, but mostly I stayed with 9th, 10th was my target year. I never taught seniors. They said, why don't you want to teach seniors? I said, because I love students. Seniors, after Christmas, turn into these other beings. High school seniors, because they know everything. You can't tell them anything. You know, they're already off, you know, they change. So I didn't want to teach them. I wanted to keep liking my students. Besides, teaching 9th and 10th grade, I could always kind of sit back and then watch my students grow up. Especially some of those I thought were just such knuckleheads, but they would eventually grow up. Thank goodness. Some had to work really hard at growing up, though, trust me. That, and that. I'm going to go ahead and give you 3 pieces of paper on these. Answers. Yes, no, you guys, one of you is at Christmas party at school. But she sent word that I left her work
Okay.
at the front for her.
Okay.
coming back? Okay. Now, y'all will miss me more than I'll miss you.
I don't think, somehow I don't believe that. We'll miss you, I'm sure.
I'm
I'm
joking.
sure you'll miss us.
I'm joking.
See, we have such good people to be around.
No, it's, no. We do have class next week, but then 2 weeks no class, and then we come back in January. I think it's third. No, fifth, fourth, something like that. I can't remember.
Huh?
4, 5.
5, 5th, okay, Tuesday?
Yeah, Tuesday.
Because I know the first is Friday.
Okay, yes, the Monday is the fourth, so the fifth Tuesday is math, and the 7th is this class, January 7th. So yes, we have the 24th, in other words, no class, it's Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve, yeah. And then we do have spring break, I can't remember when that one is, but I'll catch you up in January of those holidays. But we do the same spring break as Fort Bend ISD schools. So, that will help. Okay. Drawing conclusions in fiction. Okay, drawing conclusions. We talked about drawing conclusions in nonfiction, where you read and you can kind of figure out, reading between the lines, what something is trying to say. You have the same thing in fiction, you know, where you have to read between the lines. You can combine details with in a story with your own experience and make an important observation, help you understand what happens or what the author's trying to say. Okay. The woman at the airport. She was in the airport waiting for her flight to be called when a woman came to the phone near her chair. The woman stood there dialing, and after a while began talking in a flat, aggrieved voice. Gloria couldn't hear everything by any means, but she did hear her say, "If anything happens to me on this plane, I hope you'll be satisfied." The woman spoke monotonously and without mercy. She was tall and disheveled and looked the very picture of someone who recently had ceased to be cherished. Nevertheless, she was still being mollified on the other end of the phone. Gloria heard with astounding clarity the part about the plane being repeated several times. The woman slammed down the receiver and boarded Gloria's flight, flinging herself down in a first-class seat. Gloria proceeded to the rear of the plane and sat quietly, thinking that every person is on the brink of eternity every moment, that the ways and means of leaving this world are innumerable and often inconceivable. Okay. This one would not, I don't want you to see it. Okay. What is the most logical conclusion to draw from this passage? The woman on the phone annoyed Gloria. Gloria watches a woman who's recently ended a relationship. Gloria makes friends with the sad woman on an airplane. A woman makes a fuss about boarding Gloria's flight.
B.
Okay, Gloria watches a woman who's recently ended a relationship. It's kind of obvious.
Because of the tone.
Yeah, her tone, you know, yeah. If anything happens to this plane, I hope you'll be satisfied. Yeah. Okay. The most logical conclusion to draw about Gloria is that she is a keen observer, deep thinker, experienced and relaxed traveler, often listens to other people's conversations, or believes airport security should be stricter.
I'd probably say A. Observer.
Yes. Okay, it should be A based on this. Okay, she observed this and figured out what was going on with the lady, but the deep thinking comes here. She sat quietly thinking that every person is on the brink of eternity every moment. That the ways and means of leaving this world are innumerable and often inconceivable. Okay, the ways and means of leaving this world. Leaving this world is okay, that's a term called a euphemism. Have you ever heard that word?
Yeah, for that.
Let's see if I can spell E-U-P-H-A.
No, E-M. think
You,
it's E. I think it's E. I could be wrong, but
euphemism? No.
No, no, it's there. Okay.
Euphemism? I don't think that's spelled correctly. It's called a euphemism. We use it all the time when people have died. We say passed on, not with us any longer. But that's a euphemism, leaving this world. It's another euphemism. E-U-P-H-E-M-I-S-M.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
E-U-P-H-E.
I'm not a good speller. I used to be, but I've visualized so much misspelling with student writing over the years. It did, because I'm a visual learner. It messed with my brain. Okay. Leaving this world means passing on, dying, or innumerable. You can't count the number of various ways this could happen, and often inconceivable. In other words, we can't think of all the ways someone possibly that life could end for someone. Okay. All right. So she is a deep thinker. Okay. On this one, Angela's gifts. Read carefully. For Roy's children. Read between the lines carefully on that one. And then Laird talks with his mother. What a name, Laird. Okay. Read through this and see what you can come up with. And you do have the answers for this. But I also gave you 24 applying ideas. That's going to become homework. If you finish this before we start going over it, you can start working on that if you want.
go over this one. You need to leave now, though? That's fine. That's fine. Take care of your kids. Take care of your kids. That's okay. Okay, let's take a look at this. Again, it's reading between the lines. You'll have a lot of questions like this. If you notice on your answer sheet, like, this is what, this is 20, lesson 23. Where's the answer sheet? Lesson 23. I'd like to remind you that on these, okay, remember that DOK means depth of knowledge. In other words, that's just an acronym. But you're more interested in level 2. There's level 1 questions, which are the easiest. Level 2 are mid-range. Level 3 are the harder ones. Level 2 is where most of your questions are going to fall. Level 1 are like the easy, obvious answers. Most of these are level 2. But you notice the first 2 questions about the lady at the airport were 2s. 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. Most of these are mid-range questions, which are level 2. Okay, but number 10 kept to level 3, level 2, level 2, level 2. You have very few level 1s. Okay? You notice the homework can have more level 3s. Interesting. Okay. All right. Angela's guest. Okay. I already have these circled. It makes links for less confusion. I apologize. But she was thoughtful and organized. What made her thoughtful? How was she thoughtful? What did she do to show she's thoughtful? Yeah, she left all of these really nice things to people that she knew. She was organized because she had it all laid out. Interesting. Okay, a brooch is like a pin that you wear. But all this is her jewelry, fine jewelry. So she had everything laid out for different people, her possessions that she wanted to leave. So she was thoughtful, wanted to leave something for friends, people with whom she'd worked. And she was organized. She was getting all this taken care of. Although she died suddenly, Angela's left a little gift of some sort for every one of her friends. You can conclude the facts surrounding her death that Angela, what? She's getting ready to kill herself. You know, they say a lot of times when people are getting ready to take their own lives, they start getting things in order. Interesting. The narrator says, to him, of course, she had left nothing in particular unless it was her diary. From this statement and the other details in the passage, the most logical conclusion to draw about Angela's diary is that it probably reveals some problems in her marriage. Because if you remember, that kind of goes with this one. You know, he sees her writing, but she won't let him see what it is. He said, we had a few tips here and there. She said, no, I mean, there were quarrels. So maybe she was unhappy in her marriage. Who knows?
Yeah, but
yes.
Not to cut you off, actually, the conclusion I reached was the fact that it was a gift that he wanted most because that was, according to the passage, they shared everything except that.
Yeah.
You know, so that was why I thought that would be something that he wanted the most from her.
Okay.
So, I mean, but
okay.
The answer says A, you know.
Yeah, but if you come back, it says to him, of course, she left nothing in particular unless it was her diary. So that means that wasn't on the top of his, you know, unless it was her diary. He didn't think her diary, which she kept hidden from him, had all that stuff in there. All.
No, I answered B. I thought, because that would be the thing that he wanted the most, because that was only the one thing that he couldn't get, you know, he didn't have access to while she was alive, you know, so.
But here it says she left nothing in particular to him, so that's the giveaway.
Okay.
Okay, not the, okay, come back when you can, baby. Okay. Okay, Angela's diary caused Gilbert Clandon and Angela to have, he would not call them quarrels, say tiffs, which is the most logical conclusion. He probably tried to minimize everything. Because we know she didn't share everything. That's too broad of a statement. Married couples are bound to argue. That's too broad of a statement. Diaries don't cause them, but it's what's in them. You know. So anyway, that's why you can come up with C for the answer on that. Any questions on this? But you do know, okay, she stepped right into the England,
Yes.
Piccadilly Square, okay? It's an area in London, and a famous area. And you also know that this is a British writer because curb is not spelled C-U-R-B, it's spelled K-E-R-B. But you still know, she stepped off the curb into the street, you know what they're talking about. Interesting. Why, we don't have any reason to know why she killed herself. Okay, look how I mark up things. When you commiserate, you feel or express sadness or sympathy. You commiserate. Okay. The narrator says, in the family's opinion, children should not afford illusions. What's the most logical conclusion to draw from this statement and the other details in the passage? Okay. The family's doesn't think they're going to live up to the standards. Wait a minute, I missed one. We'll come back to it. Number 8 is kind of all through here. These kids, okay, their parents died from influenza, which is flu, basically, but they were put in these terrible places to live. They weren't treated right. They couldn't even, even the servants couldn't, people around town. So not going to amount to much. And it's partly too because the grandfather loved his son but didn't approve of the wife, and we know that because our father put us beyond pale by dying suddenly of influenza and taking our young mother with him. A defecation that was remarked on with horror and grief commingled, as though our mother had been a pretty secretary with whom he had wantonly absconded into the irresponsible paradise. In other words, he married beneath himself.
Yes.
So because beneath himself, the family didn't have a high opinion of her, therefore not of her children. It's terrible, isn't it? But that will happen. Okay, let's come back to this one. Most logical about children staying at their grandmother's house. Okay. They were treated unwelcome guests. They weren't shown the grandest of things and bought clothes and given all these great things. They were stuck in this horrible room, attic, right? The attic. Okay. Oh, they're put in a sewing room, a bleak, shabby, utilitarian, which means it's kind of like a workroom.
Yeah.
More office than bedroom, more attic than office, plate, okay, hierarchy, okay, poor. In other words, only a poor relation would be put there, someone they didn't care about. Okay, most people didn't even go in there, not even the maid. Okay. Narrator says the children's rich grandfather paid for installing with us some disagreeable, middle-aged relations in a dingy house. And it shows he's not generous at all.
No, it's not.
He just gave them the minimum of what they needed to get by.
That's right.
He'd say, I'll take care of it, but he's not bending over backwards to share much of his wealth. Okay. Then this last one. If you missed, first time I read it, I missed that word the first time I read that.
I couldn't get to it.
This kid Laird is dying. But his dad is somebody who's always put work first, not spent much time at home. And the mother always tries to make, okay, Laird is dying. On the back. Did I skip one?
No, no, you
Okay.
don't.
Okay. His dad ran off quickly. He had a phone call to make. It's like he and his mother had this unspoken way of communicating. It's kind of like a game they played. He knew better. Dad wouldn't want to be home. He never had been. I don't think Dad can stand to be around me. That's not true. Poor Dad. He's always been a hypochondriac. Well, this kid's dying. So is he contagious? Maybe not. But a hypochondriac is someone who always imagines he's sick with all these different things. Going to the doctor all the time. He hears something about an influenza epidemic. Well, he's got influenza. He hears something about something else. He's got it too. I had an aunt like that. Oh,
Really?
yes. And she wanted to talk all the time about her health. Boring. All her trips to the doctors, all of her surgeries, and all that she's going to have to do, and everything that's wrong with her.
Oh, wow.
And I'd always get stuck having to listen to her. Okay. Poor thing. Which is the most logical conclusion to draw from Laird's conversation with his mother? Okay? They're pretty much open and honest with each other. You know, sometimes it's through nonverbal communication. It says they looked at each other. He refers to his father saying, at least this will be the last time I let him down. Okay, the most logical conclusion to draw from this statement and other details is that
They don't get along well.
he's let him down before. They've not ever really gotten along. Dad's never approved. There's always been this rift, this thing between them. In the last paragraph, his mother says, Martin's behavior is his loss, which is the most logical conclusion to draw about the statement according to the details.
He's missing out.
Well, he's missing out. He's leaving all the time, going to work, putting it before his son. Is it because he's a workaholic? Maybe. Is it because he's afraid of illness? Yes.
Yes.
But I think he's always been that way. You know, he's never been what is it called? The dad that's in tune, or, you know, a dad that's involved. On the basis of the information, which is the most logical conclusion to draw about Martin.
Distant and preoccupied.
Okay, he's been distant and preoccupied with his work long beforehand. But you know, the young man's about to die because the mother kind of been, you know, in talking back and forth, she responded to by leaning over to cuff him, you know, just kind of like a little cuff him in the arm, just kind of swat at him in the arm. But, you know, there wasn't much there except bone because this young man was quite ill. Okay, this last one on applying ideas to make that your homework. Bring it with your answers next time. We'll start with that.
Okay.
Okay, and we'll probably have a little bit shorter of a class than usual next week, just because. Okay, but we will have class. Y'all have a good weekend. It's supposed to rain
Today?
this weekend. We're supposed to have a front coming in with lots of rain. Be sure to watch the Texans Sunday night. That team's lost. The Patriots have lost their last 2 games.
That's not what my daughter said, but that's actually why they're going to be more dangerous.
Yeah, I
They don't want to lose 3